You have seen it happen. A redhead walks into a room and every head turns. You have probably done it yourself without meaning to. There is something in you that clocks red hair before it clocks anything else about a person. And you have never once stopped to ask why your brain does that. Here is the strange part. Only 1 to 2% of people on this entire planet have natural red hair. That is roughly 1 in every 70 people you will ever meet. Blue eyes are technically rarer than red hair, yet they do not stop a room the way red hair does. Something about this specific color feels different. Something about it feels almost impossible, like your eyes are catching a glitch in an otherwise predictable system. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why. You will know what is happening inside a single gene on chromosome 16. You will understand why that gene has been quietly hiding inside ordinary families for generations, waiting for the right two people to meet. And you will understand why the story you have probably heard about where red hair comes from is not the real story at all. Before we get there, this is your first CTA, and I will keep it short. If your brain likes untangling mysteries hidden inside ordinary bodies, subscribe now. You are going to want to be here for what comes next. Most people assume red hair works the same way as any other hair color. Blonde, brown, black, red. Just another shade on the same dial, like someone turned a knob up or down. That assumption feels reasonable. It is also completely wrong, and it is wrong in a way that will change how you look at every redhead you meet from now on. Hair color usually comes down to a ratio. Your body compares how much of one pigment it makes against another. Eumelanin gives you brown and black tones. It is the dominant pigment in almost every person on Earth. But redheads are not simply making less eumelanin the way a blonde does. Their bodies are producing an entirely different pigment instead. It is called pheomelanin, and it does not fade toward brown the way you might expect. It stays red, orange, sometimes almost copper, because it is chemically a different substance altogether. This switch happens because of one gene. It sits on chromosome 16, and its name is MC1R, short for melanocortin-1 receptor. Think of MC1R as a light switch sitting on the surface of your pigment cells. When that switch is flipped on properly, your body defaults to producing dark eumelanin. But when something breaks that switch, the whole system reroutes itself. Your cells fall back on pheomelanin instead. Red hair, in other words, is not really an addition to the color wheel. It is what happens when a switch fails and the body improvises with the pigment it has left. Here is where this gets personal, even if you are not a redhead yourself. You are carrying thousands of small genetic switches exactly like this one right now, scattered across your own DNA. Most of them you will never notice, because they never misfire in a visible way. But somewhere in your genome, switches structurally similar to MC1R decided your eye color, your natural skin tone, even how efficiently your body handles sunlight. You are not just watching a stranger's rare trait play out. You are watching a version of the exact same biological process that quietly built the person you see in the mirror. For red hair to actually appear on someone's head, something very specific has to line up. You need one broken copy of MC1R inherited from your mother, and you need a second broken copy inherited from your father. A single broken copy alone changes nothing visible. You could carry it your entire life and never know it was there, hiding behind a functioning copy that does all the necessary work. This is the part that surprises almost everyone who hears it for the first time. Up to 40% of people in places like Scotland carry at least one copy of this mutation somewhere in their DNA. Yet only about 13% of Scots actually walk around with visible red hair. That gap between 40% and 13% is not a rounding error or a measurement mistake. It represents millions of real people carrying a hidden gene they will most likely never see expressed in their own reflection. Now picture two brunette parents. Neither one has ever had a single red hair on their head. Neither of their own parents did either, as far as anyone in the family remembers. Then their child is born, and that child arrives with bright, unmistakable red hair. No affair happened. No mysterious ancestor suddenly showed up in the story. Two silent carriers simply found each other, and after generations of waiting, the genetic math finally worked out in one specific child. This is exactly why red hair seems to skip generations, and then explode out of nowhere decades later. The trait was never actually gone from the family line. It was hiding in plain sight the entire time, passed quietly from parent to child through people who never expressed it themselves. Somewhere inside your own family tree, right now, a trait could be doing precisely the same thing, waiting for its own unlikely match. Run the math for yourself for a second. If both of your own parents happen to be silent carriers, even though neither one has red hair, you personally would have carried a 1 in 4 chance of being born with it. Not because anything unusual happened, simply because two ordinary hidden genetic switches happened to line up inside one specific pregnancy. Multiply that across millions of families and thousands of years, and you start to understand why this trait keeps resurfacing in places nobody expects it. This brings us to a second CTA, and it is not just a formality. If tracing invisible genes through visible people fascinates you the way it fascinates me, drop a comment with the rarest trait hiding somewhere in your own family. I genuinely read these, and some of your stories have shaped how I write future scripts on this channel. So why does any of this matter beyond hair color and family trees? Because MC1R does not stop its influence at pigment. It reaches into parts of your biology you would never expect a hair gene to touch. In 2004, an anesthesiologist named Edwin Liam ran a study at the University of Louisville that nobody in his field expected to matter. He wanted to know whether redheads responded differently to general anesthesia during surgery. The results were striking enough to make headlines. Redheads needed roughly 20% more anesthetic gas than people with other hair colors to reach the exact same level of sedation. In an operating room, that is not a trivial statistic. That is the difference between a patient staying safely asleep and a patient becoming aware mid-procedure. Liam did not stop there. In a follow-up study, his team compared how red-headed women responded to cold and heat against women with naturally dark hair. The redheads reported feeling cold pain at noticeably higher temperatures than everyone else in the room. Their nervous systems were, in a very literal and measurable sense, wired to feel the world more intensely. Here is why this happens inside the body. The same MC1R malfunction that changes pigment also sits near pathways in the brain that regulate pain signaling. When MC1R stops functioning properly in pigment cells, the body compensates by releasing more of a certain hormone, and that hormone also happens to activate pain receptors in the brain. One broken switch, originally responsible for deciding hair color, quietly rewires how intensely a person feels a burn, a needle, or a simple dental procedure. Think about that for a moment. A gene meant to decide something as cosmetic as hair color reaches all the way into how the brain interprets physical suffering. Your entire body was never built in neat, isolated compartments, the way a textbook diagram might suggest. Every system inside you is tangled together in ways you rarely get the chance to see clearly. Red hair simply happens to offer one of the clearest, most visible windows into that hidden tangle. Liam was not the only researcher to notice something unusual here. In 2003, a geneticist named Jeffrey Mogill studied how MC1R affects the way mice, and later humans, respond to a specific class of painkillers called kappa opioids. His team found that people carrying red hair variants of MC1R responded more strongly to these particular drugs than people without the variant. A hair gene was quietly shaping how a painkiller worked inside someone's own nervous system. Nobody designing that drug had redheads in mind at all. Think about what this means practically. In an actual hospital, for an actual person. A redhead sitting in a dentist chair may genuinely need more numbing agent for the same procedure. A redheaded patient heading into surgery may need a higher, carefully calculated dose just to stay safely under. None of this is imagined discomfort or exaggeration. It is measurable, published, peer-reviewed biology, hiding behind something as ordinary as hair color. There is a reason evolution allowed a trait this fragile, this pain-sensitive, to survive at all across thousands of years. And this is exactly where most people get the story completely wrong without realizing it. The popular version usually goes something like this. Ancient humans migrated north into Europe, into gray skies, and consistently weak sunlight. Paler skin let more limited sunlight reach the body efficiently, boosting vitamin D production in a place where sunlight was scarce most of the year. Red hair, the story goes, simply came bundled along for the ride, a side effect of surviving somewhere cold and overcast. That part of the story is actually true. Fair skin does synthesize vitamin D more efficiently under weak northern light, and the same MC1R mutations that cause red hair also lighten skin tone as a side effect. But here is the twist almost nobody sees coming, and it is the exact reason this trait feels so ancient and so strange at the same time. For years, many scientists genuinely believed Neanderthals gave modern humans red hair through interbreeding somewhere deep in prehistory. On the surface, the theory made intuitive sense. Neanderthal remains recovered from Spain and Italy were found to carry mutations sitting inside that exact same MC1R gene. Museum reconstructions quickly started showing Neanderthals with fiery red hair and pale, freckled skin, and the story practically wrote itself for the public. Our red hair, apparently borrowed from an extinct cousin species through ancient interbreeding. Then researchers checked something almost nobody had thought to check carefully enough. They compared the actual Neanderthal mutation, letter by letter, against every known human red hair variant on record. Nearly 3,700 modern humans were tested against this specific Neanderthal sequence. The Neanderthal version was not found in a single one of them. Read that again, because it genuinely rewrites the story. Neanderthals carried their own uniquely broken version of MC1R, one never seen anywhere in living humans. Modern humans independently carry a completely different broken version of that exact same gene. Two separate species, evolving in different corners of a cold, sunless Europe, somehow arrived independently at the same fiery solution. This was not inheritance passed down through interbreeding. This was convergent evolution. Two branches of humanity breaking the same biological lock, using two entirely different keys. Sit with that for a second, because it reframes almost everything you just learned about this trait. Red hair is not some ancient gift quietly handed down from a vanished cousin species. It is direct proof that when the same environmental pressure hits two different populations, biology sometimes finds its way to the same answer more than once, completely independently. Your body and a Neanderthal's body, separated by tens of thousands of years, and an entire evolutionary branch, both landed on red as a workable answer to gray skies and thin sunlight. This is the twist that should genuinely surprise you, even if you thought you already understood genetics reasonably well. A trait that looks like a single, simple inheritance is actually the record of two independent experiments that happened to land on the same finish line. Nature was not repeating an old trick here. It was rediscovering that same trick entirely on its own, from scratch, in a completely separate branch of the human family tree. And this should change how you think about rarity in general, far beyond hair color alone. You probably assume rare traits are fragile accidents, one-off flukes that barely manage to survive at all. Red hair proves that assumption is often wrong. It was successful enough, useful enough in the right environment, that biology reinvented it more than once across human history. Rare does not automatically mean weak or accidental. Sometimes rare simply means a solution so effective that evolution kept finding its own way back to it, from two completely different starting points. It also is not limited to Europe and Neanderthals alone, which is another detail most people never hear. On the islands of Melanesia, in the South Pacific, a small number of people also carry naturally dark skin paired with strikingly light or reddish hair. For a long time, some assumed this had to trace back to European contact centuries ago. It does not. Their red hair comes from a completely different gene entirely, called TYRP1, not MC1R at all. That means evolution did not just rediscover red hair twice. It rediscovered it at least 3 separate times, in 3 unrelated populations, using at least 2 entirely different genetic mechanisms. The color kept reappearing because, apparently, it kept working. There is another layer worth knowing here, one that connects directly to how people actually experience the world today if they carry this gene. That same pale, UV-sensitive skin that helped ancient humans absorb vitamin D also comes with real modern trade-offs. People with 2 copies of the MC1R red hair variant sunburn more easily and face measurably higher lifetime melanoma risk than the general population. The very trait that once helped ancestors survive weak sunlight now demands extra sunscreen under a modern sun that never stopped shining the same way it always has. There is also a darker chapter in this story worth knowing, because it shows how a simple genetic trait can become tangled in something much uglier. During certain periods in European history, red hair was treated with open suspicion instead of curiosity. During the Spanish Inquisition, red hair was sometimes associated with Judaism and used as one more excuse for persecution. A trait controlled entirely by a single gene on chromosome 16 was, at various points, weaponized for religious and political purposes that had nothing to do with biology at all. The gene never changed. How people chose to treat it did. Now think about your own body for a moment, because none of this biology is unique to redheads alone. Somewhere inside you right now are variants and switches you will never personally see expressed, silently shaping traits your children or grandchildren might carry decades from now. You are not a finished, static product sitting still in time. You are a carrier of countless genetic possibilities, most of which are still waiting patiently for the right combination to eventually appear in someone down your line. This is where we land our final CTA, and I promise you it is not a hollow, generic ask. If this kind of hidden biology genuinely changes how you see your own body, hit subscribe right now. This entire channel exists for exactly this feeling. The moment your own biology suddenly feels stranger, deeper, and more interesting than you assumed it was 5 minutes ago. Let's bring this back to that room from the very beginning of this video. A redhead walks in, and every head turns, including yours, whether you meant it to or not. Now you actually know what you are looking at. Not a random color someone was simply born with. Not a simple dial turned up or down somewhere in the genome. You are looking at 2 silent carriers who happened, against long odds, to find each other. You are looking at a single gene that reaches into pain, into pigment, into vitamin D, into an ancient story of survival under gray, sunless skies. You are looking at a trait so effective, biologically speaking, that evolution invented it twice, independently, in 2 entirely different species, separated by tens of thousands of years. Somewhere in a Spanish cave, a Neanderthal once carried a fragile, unique mutation on chromosome 16. Somewhere in modern Scotland, a completely different mutation on that same exact gene still quietly surfaces today. Generation after generation, family after family, almost always unannounced. 2 species in Europe. A third population, an ocean away in the Pacific. One color, discovered separately, more than once, through more than one biological pathway, because it simply kept working. The next time you see red hair, you will not simply see a color anymore. You will see biology's own memory, written and rewritten across an enormous stretch of time, hiding inside ordinary people who mostly have no idea they are quietly carrying it. And somewhere inside you, right now, a switch, structurally just like that one, is waiting too. You simply do not know which one yet, or who in your family it is waiting to meet. It might surface in a grandchild you have not met yet. It might have already surfaced generations back, in someone whose name you never learned. Either way, your body is still writing a story it started long before you were born, and it is not finished yet.